Mason,
Yep.
you want to hear a story?
Sure.
So this isn't probably as entertaining as the usual stories we have, or at least I don't want to overpromise anything, but me and the guys were working on what we called the AirBNB compound probably a year and a half ago. It's a property closer to Central Phoenix that has 3 structures on it. So it had a house, a guest house, and it had like an oversized garage, kind of more with like a shop door on it, that the people went through and kind of turned into a livable residence. And then they put fences in different areas around this property to allow for it to be 3 separate structures that could be private from each other. And they were using this just completely as an Airbnb place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were only working on the garage that had gotten turned into a livable space. And I was leaving one day, and I saw there were these 2 people that were sitting inside the fence of one of the other, of like the guest house area, which I didn't think was done yet. And this property backs up to the canal over there, and there's a bunch of homeless people walking through there. So I'm like, gosh dang it. Like, they weren't messing with any of my stuff, but I was nervous that some homeless people were going to jump the fence and mess with any of my stuff or whatever. But, like, I was kind of in and out. I was only there for a short period of time, so I wasn't too worried about it. I ended up calling the guy who owned the property. I'm like, hey, just want to let you know, like, there's these 2 people here. I don't know if they're supposed to be there. And I think I got his voicemail twice.
Mm-hmm.
So then I called one of his business partners who wasn't involved with that property, but I was just like, here's what's going on. Finally, that guy calls me back. He's like, oh yeah, dude, those people are fine. They're actually people who are staying in the Airbnb. So I was like, oh, thank God. But also, like, the other part of me is like, we've got like saws running out here and stuff like that. So I don't know who chose this Airbnb or what they told them they were going to be, where they were going to be staying. But I was like, that just seems weird, but I'm sure they're trying to get their money back as soon as possible.
Yeah, they probably charge them full price too.
You know they did.
Yep.
Let's mess with their settings. All right, what have you been up to the last week?
Nothing. Summer school ended. Not summer school, but the summer program or whatever the kids went to ended last Wednesday.
Yep.
And of course, the wifey, she's got an assistant principal job, so she's at work. So last Thursday, Friday, today, and tomorrow, the kids are at home bothering me, so I don't really get too much work done. But they go to school on Wednesday, which is nice. They're excited.
They start on a Wednesday?
Yeah, they do that now. 3-day school week, and then back to the full week.
It's plugged in the right area.
You plugged it in.
I know. Yeah, I got it right. Thought I was messing with my microphone for a second.
Yeah, no. We went shoe shopping. First day,
Yeah.
new kicks or whatever.
Yep.
Yep. Oldest one picked out some Jordans. They're actually pretty sick.
Yeah?
And then the younger one got some old school Allen Iverson ones, like white and yellows. Proud dad moment. They did a good job.
They chose it all themselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I let them choose. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. Mom doesn't like that because last couple years, the oldest one gets some crazy stuff. So, but yeah, nope. Not very entertaining. How's your week?
Pretty good. Weekend. Oh yeah, CrossFit games are on this weekend, so full on just watch that. Or if I was working, I'd just have it kind of playing in the background, listen to it. And then Saturday, quick little side job, nothing too crazy. It's for one of the guys that we've done some work with. He has a rental property that he wanted some stuff done at, so it was just a couple blinds and a screen that he wanted thrown on. So I was like, all right.
Nice.
The one stupid thing about that was I got so I stopped by his house because they had something for their personal house that they wanted me to look at. So I had the meeting with them, went out to the rental property, I was getting everything done, and he had wanted me to hang some blinds, put this screen on, and then look at this tub because he's like, I think it needs to be replaced. It's 20 years old, so go there, look at it, and see about getting me a price on that. So I was like, all right. I got there. I kind of got in the zone with working. Screen's done, blinds are up. Got it done quicker than I thought I was going to. So I'm like, cool. Load up the truck, rolling down the freeway. Probably 10 minutes in, all of a sudden I'm like, son of a. I didn't look at that tub, and that was like, he's been telling me about that for a little bit now. So I'm like, for a couple minutes, I'm debating, like, do I go back or do I just go home? Because it's like on the 60 and some of the freeways shut down, and I'm like, I really don't want to go back through the construction traffic that I just went through. Eventually turned around, went and looked at it. I ended up calling him. I'm like, what's wrong with this tub? And he's like, well, it's just old. So I was concerned about it. The tub looks like it was in perfect condition. Like, all the caulking was great. Like, so it looks like someone had been taking care of it. So I was like, dude, I'm not seeing anything wrong. Like, you can tell, like, it's maybe a little dirty and dated, but he's like, well, if it's fine, it's fine. I'm like, all right. So I made this whole roundabout thing just for nothing. So it's like, But yeah, then Sunday, church, spent time with the family. The wife was working this weekend, so just kind of hanging out in the evenings while she was taking care of the babies.
Nice.
Yeah, so nothing too crazy. I've got a project right now that hasn't needed too much of my attention, so it's been trying to find stuff to stay busy while I'm at like the actual 9-to-5 job. But
Yeah.
it's been good because you know how we talked about that Monday system? It's the Monday.com.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I've been messing around with that, building that out a little bit, and so it's $10 a month. Notion's free, but I feel like for me it's just a little cleaner, and I think it's going to be worth it, so I think I'm signing up for it.
I thought you already signed up for it.
I've got like 4 days left on the free trial.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So, yeah. In 4 days, I'll be giving them my bank information and being like, charge me.
$10 a month.
Yeah. Well, it's $10 a month per user.
Oh.
So, like, and then there's companies that run their whole teams off of that. So when you start adding up the amount of users that they start putting on that, you start realizing,
Can you add a user that's a free user?
No, because there's no free option.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's like an $8 a month version, there's a $10 a month version, and there's some super special ultra version that I don't need. So I'm like, I'm not even worrying about it. So, yeah, nothing too crazy. But no, I was super excited with that because just building out the templates, and you can link. There's a way that I found a way to link how I'm doing some of the estimates and finances, tracking the finances through like Google Sheets. So I can have the individual pages with the URL that gets linked to each customer's contact part in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool. And then this last week, I have probably had, I think I've had 6 or 7 people reach out for jobs.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, it's been nuts. Like, it seems like every day it's 1 or 2 people that they're like, hey, I've got this thing. It's like, all right. So
Nice.
we're just lining it up and trying to set it to where we can just knock it down. So,
Hell yeah, dude.
yeah. It was funny. Sunday we were having dinner with the family, and my sister-in-law, she was like, what do you think about doing an electric fireplace? And my brother's like, no. He's all against it for their house.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, just kind of bothering him a little bit. Yeah, of course, it would look great. It's going to be the perfect finishes, all this stuff. And he's just like, really?
Why doesn't he like it?
I think he just doesn't want to go through, like, one, probably paying for it and putting in the work to get it done in the living room. So I don't think it would be too bad, and I think it's going to look great. But the funny part about that is that was yesterday, and then I have someone call me today, and they're like, can you do an electric fireplace in my living room? I'm like, yes, we can. So, no.
Nice.
How's the real estate side going?
It's going.
You showing me some of the marketing stuff you were working on before this?
Yeah, because I mean, it's a seller's market, so I'm trying to target some sellers, some older leads that I have, to see if they still want to sell. So I'm not a big fan of cold calling, stuff like that, so it's nice that they've, within the past 2 to 3 years, they've reached out about selling their home. So they have some interest
Mm-hmm.
if they haven't already sold it. So I don't mind reaching out, talking to those people.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I don't mind, obviously asking if they want to sell it, but like sometimes you see, like especially if you watch YouTube videos, those people try to like convince people that they should sell it.
Yeah.
I'm not about that life,
No.
but right now in this market, there are quite a few benefits of trying to sell it right now, depending on what you're going to do next, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you don't ask, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, excited to get those going. Although I'm kind of doing it myself. I should have paid somebody to do it.
No.
So, but it's going.
How much would you have paid for someone else to do that?
Yeah, probably too much.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a
It's more expensive because everything's individualized. So, like, if you, like, it's significantly more expensive to print one item.
oh yeah. Yeah.
So in this case, they're individualized. So it'd be like
'Cause you're
one
you're
item
customizing
times
it per
like 30
house.
or 50. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would add up a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. So now I've got a good printer. So as long as I got the ink and stuff, I'll have to test print it first.
If you can get like a heavier,
Yeah, I've got a bunch of marketing stuff,
yeah.
printer stuff.
For the general contractor I work for, I talked to them. We talked about the social media plan. I believe maybe it was a week that you were gone, but for construction companies, it may have been the call-in show we did with you. But anyways, doesn't matter. Talked about the plan that kind of like I had in terms of like, hey, here's a way to approach social media marketing for like a construction company, because this is something I presented to the company that like I work for. And they were like, all right, yeah, like we had talked about outsourcing some of our social media stuff. And I was like, guys, I don't know if you want to do that, because there's times where your voice can get lost in like what you're trying to portray. They also don't have the right stuff. It'll get super generic, and you're going to be paying them a lot of money for basically just the ignorance that we have in this whole area.
Yeah.
And so we ended that meeting saying like, hey, like let's do a follow-up meeting to talk about some of the stuff we had in the first meeting to kind of create a plan and strategy. Second meeting, we didn't talk about any of that stuff. Very annoyed.
Just make all the project managers take pictures and videos.
Exactly. Like we have to take pictures daily for all the projects that we're on to monitor progress, and then it's a way for us to make sure if anything's done incorrectly or by any of the trades, that hopefully can get caught before anything happens, if there's anything that's needed for insurance purposes, whatever. And then as far as the customer can track the progress of their project. So it has a whole bunch of purposes for all of that. So we're already taking pictures. It's like, all right, we can get a little creative too. Like me and one of the guys that, one of my coworkers, we've even started prepping some of those reels where like you'll throw something and then it like changes with the next slide or whatever. So like we've got ideas that we're even like putting in motion, stuff like that. But I'm like, so in the second meeting they go, all right guys, yeah, we're going to be meeting with the brand voice consultant here soon for social media. I'm like, what are we doing?
Whatever. It's not your company.
No. Yeah,
Take advantage of it.
And that's where I had to like draw the line in my mind where I'm like,
Not how I would do it.
No, it's not how I would do it, but like you said, it's not my company, so I need to let go.
Yep.
And just be like, cool, whatever.
Do your thing.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We ready to kick this thing off?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sledgehammers in the Office podcast, where we celebrate the heavy hitters on the job site and in the office. Today I'm joined by MasonOxendale. What are we drinking, sir?
I am drinking, of course, my special Mio energy drink in my 2022 first place finish in the Arizona Arsenal Golf Classic.
Are you defending that championship this year?
Well, we did. We won.
Oh, so
Yeah.
we've got a 23 cup that's coming too.
No, they didn't give out cups this time.
Jerks.
I know. I actually won like one of those massage guns. It was way better.
Oh.
I did get a medal.
Yeah, okay, that's better.
Yeah.
And as always, the Shamrock Farms chocolate milk, the whole milk, because that one is definitely my favorite. So we're cutting off a little bit of us hanging out and just catching up on what we each been up to. We're trying not to swear for this one to hopefully entice the YouTube algorithm. Don't worry if you love the swearing. It'll be back next week. But first Monday of every month, we're doing a deep dive into a topic. And so we're jumping right into our topic of the evening being Airbnbs for, I was going to say the Phoenix market, but in reality, it's more a response to a tweet that came out saying that the Airbnb short-term vacation market is crashing, that some of these major cities have dropped in their, I forget if it was their cash flow or their...
their revenue.
There we go, thank you. By over 40%. And basically they were saying...
I also saw an article, too, where somebody tried to relate it to the Airbnb, the short-term rentals downfall is also going to lead to another real estate crash similar to 2008.
Was that? I wonder if it's that same guy, because we'll get into it. But anyways, let's set the stage for it real quickly. We have spent we put this topic on our calendar for a little over a month. We've spent time trying to dig into this to say, like, all right, we've got the clickbait. The Airbnb short-term rental is crashing. So what's the reality of this? Is it actually a sinking ship that's going down? Is it not? So let's jump into it real quickly. Starting with, let's just go to the beginning, how it started. So this all started from a tweet by a gentleman, and like we said, he was posting from a source that he used that was called All the Rooms, and so weird source right off the bat. Anyways, that's not the point. So all the rooms was showing that there's a lot of these cities that were down for their revenue over 40%. When people started to actually look into this, Airbnb came back at this when everyone's having their freak out moment and said, this does not support any of the numbers that we have internally. And then there are also people who came and looked at this through a common website called AirDNA. Now, AirDNA is going to be the website that people will go to to get comps or comparables for if I go buy a property and I want to turn it into an Airbnb in the Westgate area, which is going to be over by the football stadium that we just had the Super Bowl at this last year. And I want to know how much money do I think that it would be able to bring in per month. What would my vacancy rate look like? AirDNA goes through and they monitor all those numbers per zip code, so you can compare it to the different zip codes that you're looking in to be able to try and accurately price that, get the most bang for your buck, all kinds of stuff.
Really good information too, because I mean they have, what you said, occupancy, revenue. So out of all the places in the zip code, how much money are they making daily on their Airbnbs? What is their vacancy rate? So how often is it sitting there with nobody in it?
Just a second.
Nothing like dead air.
It stopped recording. See if it goes again.
Do you know where it stopped?
I think I caught it pretty quick. All right, technical difficulties, but we're back.
All right, cool.
AirDNA, you were saying?
No, I was just saying it's a great resource for figuring out your numbers and what your ROI could be on a specific property, because, like I said, vacancy, how much people are making a day on the units, whether it's a full house, a single private room, or they do shared room. I think they qualify a shared room as like a 3-bedroom house and you rent out a room. So you're not really sharing a room, but it's like shared in the same area. Yeah.
That makes sense. So,
yeah.
Awesome tool. It's pretty accurate. There's people that I know that have gone the Airbnb route that they use it. So AirDNA came out and said the revenues are down maybe 3 to 10% depending on the market that you're looking in. So nowhere near this 45 plus percentages that they were claiming in a lot of these markets. So we did a little bit of digging too in terms of who is the person that put this tweet out. So the person who put it out is Nick, I'm going to try it, Gearly, Gerli. He's got around 80,000 followers on Twitter, or X now as it's called.
Yeah, that's weird. I saw that on my phone. I was like, X, did I download some weird app? You know, so like somebody, did I get like hacked at some like porn app or something? So I click on it. I'm like, what the hell is this, Twitter?
Yeah, so, but when you go back through a lot of the posts that this person has going, I think I got pretty far back into 2022. A lot of it is just market crashing. And there's different graphics, different metrics, all these things that they're trying to point to, saying the market's going to crash, worst crash since 2008, all these things. And it's like, well, when that's all you're posting, a lot of that leads me to believe that it's a sensationalism type thing. Mm-hmm. So I know you mentioned to me earlier when we were kind of prepping for this that some people took some exception to the source that he was using. So I'll let you dive into that in a second. But it seems that you've got someone who they've got an audience. It's not like it's just me where I've got.
What else does he post about though?
That's it.
Oh, he just posts about real estate.
Real estate, the financial market, banking market, stuff like that.
Oh, does he have stuff on crypto too?
I forget if there was crypto. I just remember it was the banking, real estate, and like just a lot of finance stuff.
Oh, weird. I wonder what his background is, other than posting stuff on social media about that stuff.
Yeah, which I don't want to get into, like, we don't need to dig into like who this dude is too much, but just to kind of paint the picture of what is this guy really focusing on for the most part with his posts. It's not, hey, we're seeing, like, you'll see people if they work in hedge funds or stock markets or things, they're like, hey, it looks like the economy is in a better spot, or there's going to be times where it seems like we're seeing some concerning things. But there is an ebb and flow to a lot of these markets. So, and we've talked about it all the time before, that if you say the sky is falling enough, then eventually when something bad happens, you get to try and pretend that you are right. But after you are screaming this for years on end, it's like, hey, you're just that guy who's on the street corner going, the world's going to end. It's like, if you live long enough, you might be able to get it right, but everyone else is going to look at you like a kook in the meantime.
Yeah, the frustrating part, too, is that, like, I mean, my wife does this a lot. She reads the headlines and stuff like that, and it's like people just go off of that.
Yep.
Or, like, a lot of these articles, like, they're articles, but they might be, like, 4 paragraphs, and they say nothing. And so it makes it look like it's a real article with real information, but it just literally says nothing in it.
Or in this case, you had someone who posted something from a website that had data in it
that supported what he was trying to say.
Right. And then you've got other news outlets that just pick it up.
Yeah, exactly, too.
You had mentioned something about the credibility for the All the Rooms place, though.
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of All the Rooms place, really, because, I mean, as far as the short-term market, AirBNB is or DNA is kind of where I go. But, I mean, they are surprisingly, there are quite a few investors. They actually do use their numbers for it, but there's so many, I'm trying to find it, there's so many different things wrong with it. Like, as far as they don't provide, like, some of the most crucial ROI metrics, so your return on investment. Let's see, like they use daily rates, occupancy rates, monthly and annual revenue, which are kind of like the core, kind of like the main ones you look for. But it's just they apparently fail to have like anything else besides those 3, and it's not only the thing too is that like AirBNB uses DNA. What do I keep saying?
D&D.
DNA.
Air Dungeons and Dragons.
They use like the 2 biggest ones that people, and there's another website, I forget what it's called, but the 3 biggest ones for short-term rentals. Mm-hmm. they use their information, whereas like this place, they use like 5 or 6 different sources. And it's like you get too broad of a range of different stuff. Plus, I mean, we're going to go more into with Airbnb and, you know, being a qualified host, you know, on the qualifications legally and stuff that you need to do. Where these other websites, you know, like the people that are doing it on there, they're not tracked that well. So it's like they're posting information, you know, what they claim they might have made, you know, and stuff like that. So it's not really that credible.
Right.
Like, yeah, this website's saying this, but like, how truthful are the users, and what does that website do to make sure that they're reporting the right stuff?
Right. Yeah.
So that's just probably one of the biggest downfalls of this specific source in this, when we're talking about this tweet. And because, I mean, other than all the rooms in this tweet, this is the only thing that I've seen or heard about anything about the short-term rental crash and crashing the market.
Yeah, and then one of the first things I jumped to was, okay, Airbnb is one of the largest short-time or vacation rentals that is in the market right now. They're probably the most common name. You've got Vrbo out there, and I'm sure there's a couple others that aren't as prominent. But if Airbnb, wow, voice cracked hard there. If Airbnb is actually crashing, they are a publicly traded company that needs to report the numbers that they have. What is their share price doing? Because if it's plummeting, then it means, hey, something's wrong. People who are analyzing the financials of this are saying, hey, this is a sinking ship.
Yeah, and reporting false numbers is like jail, federal. That's big time stuff.
Very bad. So when I went to take a look at it, and this is going to be something you could find easily just through a simple search engine, that you can track for the last year. How's their share price done? Last 3 months, last month, everything is up in their share price. So if we go back, this tweet was released in June. So since then, share price is still up. Go back 3 months, it's still up. Go back to the beginning of the year, everything is in the green from that aspect. There was, across the whole stock market, people had taken a dip towards the end of the year, but that's not because Airbnb was in trouble. That's because the entire market took a step back altogether. So the nice part for us is that 4 days ago, Airbnb released their earnings report, or their quarterly earnings report for the second quarter. And when you open it up, there's these nice, bold numbers that start to explain where this is most likely, this whole revenue issue is incorrect, because they talk about their revenue increased 18% from last year. I think it may have increased, I've got it in here at $2.5 billion. I may have written that down wrong, but I do know that their free cash flow was $900 million. Their net income increased 72% to $650 million. So all those things are saying, all right, the share price is up. They report to people, hey, we're doing great. We're expanding into new markets. We're doing great there. We've had the most, I think they had the most reservations that they've ever had. The amount of short-time rentals that people have been booking is, I believe that's still hitting all-time highs. It's like, it might be slowing down a little bit for the summer, but what they're reporting is like, hey, we're in a growth period right now. So going back to like what you said, depending on what companies you're looking at, if we start looking at small companies and overvaluing their position, sure. But it's like, let's take the big one in the market. Airbnb, we can tell right there. Share price is up. That one seems strong. And then in terms of what that means long-term, it probably means that they've got a strategy, and we'll kind of talk to this later as far as they're adapting with the market in the different legislation, the rules, different things like that. They're trying to make sure that they are a viable company long term. So I don't see that this is necessarily falling apart. One of the things we did talk about in all of this was just in terms of how does this whole business model work? And this is going to lead into super hosts, saturation, all kinds of stuff like that. But let's start with, we'll look at the greater Phoenix area, because That's what we know quite a bit, and there have been some big events that have happened here within the last 8 months. So we had the Super Bowl that was here. We had the Waste Management Open. We had the Waste Management
Same weekend too.
Same
out
weekend. Both of them are huge draws. I remember like when for like 2 weeks the traffic here was terrible because we had a lot of people here. But
Yeah, what was it, like 4-6 years ago? We had the Super Bowl, and I mean, I have friends and family that within a freaking 5-mile radius of the arena, they literally booked a vacation, and had like a full-on week vacation fully paid for because they rented out their rooms. And they made money, they made money going on vacation.
right, so a lot of people had friends like that who had a story about, oh, this is a great way to make money. There's going to be a lot of people who are coming here. So we saw an increase from 2017 to 2022 of, I think it quadrupled in the amount of people who were doing the short-term rentals here. Now, here's where we kind of hit some of the problems. We had so many people doing that there's an oversaturation. I think there's also, for some people, probably an overpricing that 50% of those did say that they went vacant during that couple week stretch right there. So when we were talking about this earlier, there's an aspect of that is when you have looky-loo people who are looking to make a quick buck, it's like that's not the way to be going about this whole thing. Airbnb, the way that you're going to make money off of this is really going to be systematizing it. You want to make sure that the customer experience is correct, all those things, because one of the things people are looking to get to is being a super host. That's going to, at least for Airbnb, that's going to promote you in the whole algorithm, all that good stuff. But to be able to get to that point, and we can get into some of the particulars of what it takes to get there, what it all boils down to is, once again, this is a business. You need to understand what's going on. It's not just that there's this free money tree out there. As long as I open up my house and say, go ahead, you can stay there as long as you give me $10,000 because the Super Bowl's in town, people aren't going to be paying that. Yeah. So you start pushing more people back towards hotels, things of that nature. But
yeah. Before we go into the numbers too, so like the Twitter thing, it was all about revenue. Oh, the revenue's down, all this stuff. But in reality, it's not the business Airbnb's revenue stream is falling, or specific people who have 50 plus short-term rentals that their revenue is shrinking isn't because of the lack of people traveling and looking for stuff. The issue is these oversaturation of the number of rental homes, which therefore, you have a short number, same exact travelers, you have a small amount of short-term rentals, your occupancy rate is going to be very, very low. There's going to be people always in it. But the more people that get into it, the more options that they have. So now they can go and pick other places. So these same people who were having 5% vacancy rates and stuff, and they were having their revenue was coming in all the time. Well, it's saturated. There's way more options for these people. So now their specific revenue, amount of revenue coming in shrinks. But the way that Airbnb has their business model, most companies, their revenue is shrinking. But Airbnb, because there's more of them out there, they're not shrinking because travelers are still going everywhere. So we don't have, as far as the company, we don't have a revenue problem. We have an occupancy problem.
Yep.
Which isn't a problem for the company at all. That's a great thing for them. That's more of a bigger problem for people who are in the short-term rental business.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of these numbers we're gonna, talk about how it can, affect the local market or businesses, just because what you were talking about earlier, the structure of how you structure the business, essentially.
Yeah, which to that point, the way that some people have structured the business, if you're going out there and buying a house in preparation for some of these events, you're buying a house right now at a premium compared to where they're able to rent out at because of the saturation, because of the availability, things of that nature. So I talked to a friend of mine about some of the Airbnbs, and they purchased some of their properties before 2020. So it was back in 2019 before everything went crazy with property values. So they have a huge advantage over anyone else in terms of the payment that they need to make on those properties is significantly lower than anyone who wants to jump into the market at this point, even
Exactly.
if the person at this point is putting a significant amount of money down.
Yeah, because your profit margins are so low compared to your buddies.
Right. And so this is where it comes back to, once again, as far as, do you know your numbers getting in? Do you know what you're getting into all the way? The vacancy rate, your the amount of money that goes into operations. Is there a manager? How much is the manager? All kinds of stuff like that.
And to just for numbers, as far as we're talking about the issue with the occupancy rate because of the oversaturation of short-term vacation rentals is just here alone in the Phoenix Metro Valley. From compared to 2019 to now, so 4 years, we've had a 90% increase in the number of short-term rentals available just here in the valley, which 90% increase, we're still just, barely above 7,000. Of course that's reported, but that's a pretty good number. So essentially you're looking at what, like 1,000 homes. 4 years ago, there was 1,000 short-term rentals available. And that's when the AirBNB, Verbo started becoming real big, probably way before that. So if you wanted to come out here for an event, you only had a certain amount of options. Now you have 90% more options. So those people with multiple short-term rentals, they own a smaller part of the market share.
Yeah. I was looking through some of the numbers that you had in terms of the average occupancy rate and the average daily rates. And I see you've got that broken down a little bit. You want to walk through what those are real quick?
Yeah, so these are just the current, the place where I got it. I didn't have enough time to add all the cities up and to take in the whole. When we talk about Phoenix Metro out here in Phoenix, Phoenix is just the main city, but then there's a bunch of sub-cities all around us.
And they just run right into each other.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like out in Illinois where you got to drive 20 minutes to get to the next city of just farmland. But so just in the Phoenix, Arizona part, the average revenue, so the amount of money that if you were to make a home, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, a condo or something like that, their revenue is about $23,000 a year. And then if you were to do a private room, so kind of like the story at the beginning, where they had their own little areas, those were probably more private rooms because you couldn't sleep more than, they didn't have 2 or 3 bedrooms in it, did it?
Oh, they did.
Oh, they did.
That's what I was saying. This whole garage,
Full-on compound.
Dude, yes, that's why we call it. Whenever we talk about it, that job, we call it the AirBNB compound because they've got 3 full structures that are completely outfitted to have 3 full parties in and of themselves.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. So then they have what they call a private room. So maybe if you were to rent a casita off the side of a house kind of thing.
Or like you said, if someone has an extra bedroom.
That's your private area. Yeah, but then they also have what they call a shared room. So
okay,
a 3-bedroom home, but then you rent out one specific bedroom kind of deal. Yeah. So $23,000 a year for a house, almost $8,000 a year for just a private room, and then $5,000 for a shared room. And that's just the current average. But then right now the average occupancy rate for all 3 of those is between 70 and 60% occupancy rate. So 2/3 of the year you have nobody staying at your short-term rental. And that's where you're talking about with your buddy is that if you bought high, you didn't use cash, you have a loan on it, and then you charge a certain amount, you have very low profit margins. So that short amount of time you have people in it, is that going to be enough money, to cover your costs while it's being vacant? And then are you going to be able to make enough money on it?
Yeah, and from my discussion, chocolate milk is hitting me in the back of the throat. From my discussion with my friend, he was saying that the goal when you're kind of first looking at your numbers is you want the gross income from your Airbnb to be right around 2 times what you'd be bringing in from a 12-month lease, right? So usually your short-term rentals are going to have a higher monthly rent than your 12-month lease, because in the end, it's, what are we doing? 12-month lease, you're guaranteed essentially that you've got someone there all year. So you know that next year, either you're renewing or you need to go find someone to fill that spot. So it's going to come down to how many dead days do you have. When you have a short-term rental, if it's 3 to 6 months, now you're increasing that by 2 to 3 times, right? Or 2 to 4 times. I can do math. And then when you're doing an Airbnb, you're obviously multiplying that so many more times across a month, and then stack that up across a year. That's why usually that rate is going to be higher. So when people look at, okay, the goal is to gross 2 times what you could get on a 12-month lease. But the important part about all of that is, first of all, that's gross. So you're going to need to pay the cleaning crews, the manager, if you have one for the property, things like that. So that is going to dwindle down on your bottom line. So going back to, like we said, if you're a person who doesn't have the system set up, doesn't know your numbers completely, this can start to hurt it. So this is one of those things, as far as we're more transitioning in this podcast now from saying, hey, the revenues are not crashing. Airbnbs are not crashing. We're not seeing an influx of, oh, this was an Airbnb, but Mason, I can't hold on to it anymore. Can you sell it for me on the market? The amount of short-term rentals that are out there, we looked at like 21,000. Let's say half of them went on the market tomorrow. So we've got 10,500. We still wouldn't be overwhelming the Arizona market with a supply. So I'm getting on a rabbit trail. Doesn't matter. But basically, all we're saying is, going now to the business side, for someone who is looking into buying an Airbnb, we've analyzed the median purchase prices. They dropped until January, but now they're coming back, right? So if you're looking to get in, the bar to get into the market right now is a little higher. So it's just really being able to understand. It's like, if the average occupancy rate is between 60 to 70%, you got to factor that into your equation, make sure all your numbers make sense on that side.
Exactly. It's just like real estate. I mean, essentially, it's real estate. Short-term rentals, it's real estate investing. It's just like, back in, 2009, 2010, 11, you could find homes for cheap and you could flip them you could hold on to them, resell them. There were a lot of people were jumping into the flip market. But nowadays, right now, it's hard to find that home cheap enough where the numbers make the sense. And so with the growing amount of short-term rentals, it's just making that specific niche of real estate investing a little bit not as easy. So what do we say? People looking for a quick buck kind of thing, like they were doing with the flips. It's not as easy anymore. You got to be able to track your numbers and run it more like a business.
Yep. You can't buy something, be like, oh, we screwed up, we're coming in way over budget, but it's okay. We've appreciated so much that we're going to be okay.
Exactly.
It's now you need to be on your spreadsheets to know, like, hey, this is where we're finishing, and we're hoping to God that the market isn't bouncing around too much, so that we can get the margin out of this that we need to.
Exactly. Now, we can talk a little bit about the saturation. The increased number of short rentals, the pros and cons to, as far as if we're going to relate it back to the market crashing. Obviously, there's more and more homes becoming short-term rentals, in a short what is that saying? Short vacuum? No? Did I butcher that? Probably.
I don't know where we're going.
Anyways, well, I'm just saying that with more people buying short-term rentals, they're purchasing homes. So they're making the real estate market better. They're not making it worse, right? So that's essentially, going to be, my ear itches. That's going to, at first sight, that's going to help the market. More people, people instead of sitting on the money or saving it and stuff like that, investing it somewhere else, they're buying real estate, which is good. They're helping out the market.
Well, and then let's go back to what we talked about earlier as far as there's between 21 to 24,000 short-term rentals in the Arizona market right now, right? So this isn't going to deal with amount of homes that are in Arizona, but we've got 4.5 million people in the greater Phoenix area, right? So obviously you got to take into account families, all that stuff, but that's still a ridiculously large number of people in housing compared to the people who are in Airbnbs, right? So if we were to even look at the Airbnb or short-term rental market and say, hey, it is oversaturated, and there's going to be some people who maybe they bought at an inopportune time and the financials don't make sense, and now they need to sell it, right? Like we've talked about last podcast, like we've talked about today, that the median purchase price is relatively close to what it was last year. It is a little lower, but it is going to be something where hopefully in most cases you're not seeing people just lose, like you shouldn't be seeing it. Hopefully you're not seeing people lose everything on that. It's like there might be a small loss on that. There's options inside of that. I'm getting off the point. The idea being that if we start to correct that supply and demand curve, because if we are imbalanced right now, that 21 to 24,000, like we said, is not going on the market right away. Maybe the balance is currently between 15 and 18,000. So it's like, all right, that's going to be I can do math.
I can't.
Would that be 6 to 9,000 homes right there? Or and that's, but like we said, that doesn't just account for homes as far as someone might be renting out a room, someone might be renting out a casita, things of that nature. So the market that's affected is the short-term rental market. The market that is not affected is the greater real estate market in general. And that's the one we need to pay. That's the one we're paying attention to, right? You look at the 2008 crisis. What was that caused by? That was caused by a lot of defaulting mortgages. That was caused by a lot of speculation that was done incorrectly, all those things. So that's not the case with the short-term rental market. If the short-term rental market did go completely sideways, there would be a blip in the system. It would hurt, but it's not going to be one of those things that should cause Armageddon across the financial world.
Exactly, too. I mean, that's where you see some of these articles and different things about, oh, these big companies now are selling off their short-term rentals or whatever and all this stuff because of the saturated market. It's getting too difficult to get their property rented out and stuff. But there's so many other factors because those companies, like your buddy, they've had it longer term. So, like, you know, if it wasn't a seller's market right now, or if the market was down, it was taking forever to sell, these big companies wouldn't be selling. And where was I going with this? I don't know. But
if those large companies were going to put as those companies put their inventory of the short-term rentals on the market, which is a small percentage, we're not going to be doing permanent damage to the economy.
Not even going to take a dent, especially here in the greater Phoenix area.
Yeah.
We're not even going to feel that.
No, and like we said, look at the Airbnb numbers. They're in a growth period. So if we have an oversaturation right now, it means that there needs to be a correction. But other than that,
is it an oversaturation? Like, you know, like what signifies it as an oversaturation?
I'd say as far as the 50% number is the only thing I'm going off of. But to look at the vacancy rate of the 70%, as long as people are doing their numbers right, then they're fine.
Yeah,
so I don't want to speak incorrectly to someone's situation.
Yeah, well, just because short-term and vacation rentals are kind of more of on the newer side. Am I right?
Yeah.
You know, on the newer side, so it's like people are thinking, like, who got it in the beginning stages, huge profit margins because there weren't a lot. And all of a sudden they're shrinking. Like, is it saturated, or is this what this new business are we getting closer to what to expect when you get inside of the business?
That's a really good point.
You know,
That's a really good point.
The people saying it's oversaturated, those are the people who got in and were making
got into it.
triple their money, and then now all of a sudden they're only 1xing now.
Or they're the people who got in when people were telling them that you can 3x your money, and then they're not doing that because the payment that they're paying to a bank is not the same as their buddy who had it 3 years prior because he got a better interest rate, better price on everything, and can rent it correctly.
Even if you on investing, even if you're breaking even, you're not losing money at all, like including all like the fees and stuff. Like all that money you have tied up in that house, you're not getting taxed on and all that stuff. And then, for the most part, houses appreciate, as long as you don't have to sell it in a bad point of time. So it's not like it's a terrible investment if you're not making a lot of money. Now if you're pinching pennies and you're putting that money in there to survive on kind of thing, like you needed that monthly income to pay bills and stuff like that. Yeah, get out. It's not the time for
this. This is an investment.
Exactly. But these people, you're
They
breaking
treat it like
even,
the money tree.
making zero, but your money's still technically working for you.
Yeah.
Because guess what happens? You're going to get taxed on that money when you sell it.
Yep.
Now there's some with the I don't even want to call it oversaturation now. But
well,
because
we can move on from that. I feel like we've kind of dug into that.
Well, I just wanted to give an example of one of the downsides of there being a huge amount of short-term rentals.
Okay.
And you're probably going to see it in more smaller cities, destination cities, like where is it?
Sedona.
Sedona, yeah. So Sedona, I don't know if you're not familiar with Arizona. Beautiful. It's up north, so you get out of the hot weather for the most of the time. They got big old beautiful red rocks everywhere. It's awesome. They got a great couple golf courses over there too. But so it's very small niche city. A lot of people like to go up there or live up there because it's more of a like old school. You go down to the market, do all that kind of stuff. But what is it right here? So what Thaddeus was talking about, 24,000 of the $4.5 billion, or 4.5 billion homes available. What's that ratio?
4.5 million people in Maricopa County.
What percentage is that? Under a percent? Maybe 1%?
Ridiculously small.
Yeah. Let's say, under 1%, or we'll say 1% of it. Up there in Sedona right now, 15% of the homes out there are short-term rentals. Because Sedona's also a very big staycation place.
Very big touristy spot.
Yeah, exactly. Especially like a local one, too. So there's a lot of, these smaller cities, like there are local people, like local workers, bartenders, people working at all these places that people go to who are actually these short-term rentals. One of the biggest things right now is that people are complaining about them being overpriced. So there's not enough long-term rentals. The housing market might not be the best, especially up there. It might not be the best time to buy some up there. But a lot of these local workers are having to move to other cities outside, like Clarksdale, which I didn't even know we had a Clarksdale in Arizona. But, they're going to cities 30, 40 hour away and having to commute to work every day because they can't afford to live in Sedona because of the short-term rentals driving it.
Sedona is not set up with the rest of the infrastructure where you've got people who are just turning regular. It's supposed to be a house for a regular family, right, to live there. So it's if someone's there and they do work in a more touristy job, it's like the infrastructure was built around people staying at hotels or things of that nature. But when you have the 15% of them, those houses are now turning into those short-term rentals.
Yep.
That's when you're having that.
And
huge
there's
effect.
a lot of local bars, local restaurants. There's not, you can't, let's go to a Texas Roadhouse. Like it's not out there. You can't go to a quick.
Yep.
There might be a Subway or Burger King, McDonald's attached to a gas station. That's what you're getting as far as chain stuff. But I don't know the date of it, but the city council just approved a $240,000 program that would incentivize homeowners to lease out their homes to local workers, and not as short-term Airbnbs, but as long-term rentals to help make the housing more affordable.
And that long-term rental is going to be a 12-month lease.
Yes, a 12-month lease. So the program essentially is that it would pay homeowners. So if you owned a short-term rental, the city of Sedona, depending on the size of your home and stuff, depends. They would pay you between $3,000, $3,000 to $10,000 in exchange for you converting your short-term rental into a long-term rental for a local worker for a 12-year lease.
Yeah, which in some ways, I'm going to kind of zoom out real quick. basically what we had happen was Airbnb, Vrbo, these companies came in and they disrupted the short-term rental and vacation rental market, right? And it happened
Because before then, a vacation short-term market was you would go to a hotel.
or a timeshare.
Yes.
Right.
Timeshare was the closest thing, but it was still, most timeshares were still in hotels.
Right. So they have disrupted the market very quickly, and hey, there's no judgment on that. But what we're seeing a lot of times, if it's in this situation with Sedona, and they're saying, hey, we want to incentivize people to have these at least 12-month leases to take care of the citizens that we have here, or if there's people who are like, hey, like, we've got a lot of Airbnbs in this area, so there's a lot of just noisy parties all the time. People aren't taking as good of care of their houses, things of that nature. So we're starting to see, in some ways, also people too say, hey, we're not always a huge fan of what's going on here. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're seeing the legislature, like in Sedona or in other areas, start to catch up.
Well, plus a lot of those small cities too, they're real big on, like, people move there, they enjoy the small time feel of knowing everybody, talking to people, and all that kind of stuff, and interacting with them too. But yeah, so you would get, you still, I mean, it's not a bad incentive. Like, you get paid $10,000 on top of getting a 12-year lease, and that's just for 1 year. So I don't know how long this program's going to go, but it's like, oh, they renew their lease. They probably, if they are still in the program, they probably get another extra $10,000.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just, small cities might be hurting more, but it's still like, there's other cities, they're going to move other places. Like, it's not, I don't know if for like the economy wise, like, yeah, local workers aren't going to be spending their money there. They might spend money in the other cities and now, but they're still going to have revenue coming in because of those tourist people.
Yeah, and you're not disrupting the existing population.
And everything we said here, this isn't for just any 12-month lease. This is specifically for local workers. So they're designing this program not for, revenue, for the economic value of Sedona, but just for the city, the feel of what people love about Sedona. So it's not like, oh no, like these short-term rentals are going to kill all small cities. No, it might just take away, if they don't do the right things, it might take away some of the value, and it might not be that go-to destination anymore. But yeah.
Yeah, and then we're seeing, even outside of Sedona, there's all kinds of rules and regulation in parts of California. I think it's in, I think it was Oregon, and then there's also some states back east with specific legislature for those short-term rentals, which we know that here in Arizona, the governor last year signed a law allowing for cities can require short-term rental owners to be licensed and to have $500,000 worth of liability insurance. And then there's also rules that cities can impose with notification of neighbors, and then also the license can get suspended depending on if there's a potential health violation, safety violation, noise, nuisance, or other violations if they get 3 of them in a 1-year period. So, like we said, there was a big disruption. The numbers are saying Airbnb is here to stay in these short-term rental companies, but the legislation is now catching up to them. Right?
Yeah, well, they're late because just like everything, it's about the money.
Well, it's also the government moves slower than the enterprise.
But the government doesn't start kicking their butt into gear until they see, like, oh, I could be making money off of that. Because the problem was about 6 years.
Hey, this isn't a political podcast.
6 years ago, I think 90% of the short-term rentals, like, they were just like you bought an extra house and you rented it out kind of thing. But like nowadays, you got to have a ETN. You got to have a business entity, essentially, an ETN number. You can't run it off your Social Security, essentially. It has to be more business ran, so that way they can track the numbers and then they can also tax you on that money.
I think you had mentioned they did a business audit of that, and there was it like a 90% of people?
Yeah, 90. Yeah, it was. I think 6 years ago. Yeah, 6 years ago. Yeah, they did an audit, and 90% of people were running it, quote unquote, illegally, because most of these websites didn't Cause they call them hosts. Well, that's what they do on Airbnb. If you own a property, you're hosting people who are traveling. And that 90% of them were just, advertising their property on these websites, but then they weren't, legally a business to be able to rent it out kind of deal.
But what you mentioned before we got the podcast started was very interesting. That makes me think that Airbnb and some of these other companies are going to do a really good job. That they start requiring you to have these things in place to be a host on their platform. So you need an EIN, you need all the proper documentation in order, because then if and when you get audited by the government, it's like Airbnb gets to say, hey, everyone who's a host with us has that. They're certified. So this is one of those things too where, okay, the legislation is catching up to these short-term rentals, but these companies are not just saying, oh, screw you, government, you're making our lives worse. They're saying, okay, that is a reasonable measure that you're putting in place that makes sense. Let's streamline all of this for anyone who wants to be on our platform, make it really easy, all those things. So this is, once again, it's businesses adapting to the way that things are being regulated. Regulation is adapting to the way that business is being done in the marketplace, and I think that it's being done appropriately. All right, we've crossed the 1 hour mark, so I feel like we've thrown a lot of words out there, sometimes probably in confusing order. So if you had to summarize what we kind of talked about today, just break it down real quickly, what would you say as far as for the short-term rental market?
There was one more thing I wanted to say.
Okay.
But I mean, it's more, into the business aspect of it, which is kind of interesting, as, both of we're consumers of the short-term rentals, is that the oversaturation, a lot more people getting into it, but also those prices per day, per week are significantly higher. So, Airbnb has seen the number of nights booked slow down this first and second quarter. So Airbnb actually have what they call it. They nudged their hosts to tell them to lower their prices. Because they're, the high prices or they're the high cleaning fees. I don't know when's a lot, like you now, before you check out and you agree and you do all this stuff on their website, you get a full breakdown of all the costs, which include the Airbnb service fee. Like they used to just be like, here's your total amount. The service fee, what you're paying for a cleaning fee, any discounts, all the taxes, like it's all out there. So you know exactly what you're signing up for. Because there's some times where they're charging an extra $1,500 for a cleaning fee, which is just outrageous. Because what was it? The average nightly rate is $166 per night. And that's an average from a private room to a full-on bed. So what a lot of... so this kind of ties into... We were talking about this off-air. This ties into the oversaturation, so there's more competition, so there's more things that you have to do. So because of all these people are looking for the things, you got to be more creative. Some people are, they're probably not. There's no cleaning fee, although they probably priced it into their overall price or whatever, but no cleaning fee. They're allowing, because there's a lot of, you can't, within 14 days, you can't cancel. They're getting rid of cancellation fees. So if you're going to stay in the business, you need to start being a little more creative on what you're, incentivizing these people so they choose yours over other ones. And Airbnb is doing a good job of trying to be more transparent with it. Because, like we said, they're a young company, so they're learning on the go, too. So that was just food for thought. So as you're consuming it, make sure you read all the little things and see what kind of incentives that you're getting if you're looking at a couple different places. Because if you're like me, I just look at pictures of which one's the coolest, But there might be a lot of other hidden stuff. But your question?
If we had to summarize kind of all the words that we've spewed out this evening, how would you tell people? How would you tell people what is going on?
The market is crashing. No, but that's what I mean. Like, how would I tell people who are asking about, the market's crashing because of the short-term Airbnbs?
Or just someone comes up to you and says, Mason, I saw a headline that says the short-term rental market is crashing. There's a 40+% revenue decrease. What do you think about this? And you had to summarize it real quickly.
Yeah, well, my first question would be like, are you a consumer or do you own a couple short-term rentals? Because that's going to be your biggest issue. You know what I'm saying? Like, that headline is going to affect more people inside of the business because there are more people. So I would say with Airbnb, the overall company, the short-term rentals, there's not a revenue problem. The problem is that companies inside the business, there's way more people in the business now. So now they have to compete more. So they're having higher occupancy rates. So they're going to be vacant more often, which is going to reduce their total profit. So especially out here in Phoenix, the market's so good out here and it's such a low number of homes that it's not going to affect the market, whether it increases or decreases. Airbnb takes over, and like you either own a home or you do a short-term rental, or it just totally falls off the earth. It's not going to affect our housing market right now at all. So don't read the headlines. It's just like it's if you're a consumer or if you own it. So it's out. How do I want to phrase this? As somebody, because I'm assuming your question is as a consumer, but hey, what's going on? Is the market going to crash? All this stuff.
More just like, to me, you always get those friends who are like, hey, I saw this headline. It has to do somewhat with real estate. Tell me about what's going on.
Yeah, I'm probably trying to be too in depth about it because usually when people ask me that, I don't go to it. Like, it'd be like, no, Airbnb they're making more money than ever. There's just more people getting into it, so a lot of more people have more share of the profits. So if anything, you can use that to your advantage and try to negotiate something you see on Airbnb. But it's not going to affect the housing, and you should probably go buy a house. I can help you out.
All right. We'll wrap it up there. Where can they find you?
At Instagram, at MasonOxendale.
All right. You can find me at Sledge. What is it? Cyto_building on Instagram. And then it is at Sledge in Office on Twitter, or as it's now called, X.
You struggle to remember your tags without it having the sheet up, huh?
Because I was doing the Twitter one for Instagram rather than.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, just don't ask me to do the outro.
All right. Until next time, I hope your hammer stays accurate, your Wi-Fi fast, and your work blessed. See you, everybody.
Blah, blah.